Hey everyone, JT here. Welcome back to the channel. Well, there's not much great news at the moment, is there? Energy prices are still rising. The energy price cap has just been announced. That's going up despite the wholesale cost of energy coming down. Policy changes are pushing fixed costs onto electricity, not gas. Smart tariffs, well, they're kind of helping absorb some of this, but really, there are challenges that need to be addressed. And today, we got an insight into some of those with a webinar run by Octopus Energy. Now, I'm sure Octopus will post the webinar at some point on their social media channels, but I want to give you my reaction to some of the things that were discussed during that webinar today, because some of it is very prescient. And they did address the export question. So for those that watched my video the other day about what EDF and E.ON are doing with their export tariffs, well, we got some indication of where Octopus's direction of travel may be, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in the video. So today we heard from three people from Octopus, a very, very brief introduction from Greg Jackson, the CEO and founder of Octopus. Then we also had Rachel Fletcher, who is Director of Regulation and Economics, who talked a little bit about the sort of repercussions of the energy price cap rise. And then the vast majority of the webinar was hosted by Phil Steele. Phil is the Future Technologies Evangelist, and today he was specifically talking about the future of smart tariffs. Now, I should say at this point, I was really impressed with the transparency from Octopus in this webinar. There was a lot of Q&A, probably a little bit too much content, not enough Q&A, given the amount of questions that came up, but they did everything they could to answer as many questions as they possibly could, and I didn't get any impression they were trying to avoid any or give half answers. So all credit to the team at Octopus for that transparency. But we kicked off with Rachel talking about the price cap shock that we all got the other day. We were expecting bills to come down, given that the wholesale cost of energy was falling, and we saw the price cap go up. And Rachel put a very interesting slide on the screen, which I managed to capture a screen capture of. I'll pop up on the screen now. Hopefully Octopus won't mind too much. But it kind of shows the impact of this, or what is causing, what is driving this price cap increase. Now, what you can see here is that the wholesale cost of energy has actually gone down or by roughly £29 for somebody who's on a price cap tariff. Network costs have gone up negligible, 83p. Supplier costs have gone up a little bit. But the biggest part of this increase is government policy. This is things like the warm homes discounts and other government policies that are just heaped onto our standing charges. So you can see here that the vast majority of the reason for this going up is government policy. And this is the government whose manifesto pledge was to bring down the cost of your energy by at least £300. And all we've seen from them so far is energy prices going up and up and up. And it's about time that they did something about this. Now, Rachel did say there was a bit of a hope, a wish, crossing your fingers, that with the budget only a few days away, that we might see something in the budget that would take some of these costs and put them into general taxation, not directly onto our energy bills. Now, to me, that just seems like moving numbers around on a spreadsheet, but anything that sees the cost of our energy come down, I'm sure will be welcomed by an awful lot of people. So despite the cost wholesale energy price come down, the whole reason for this whole increase is really down to government policy. And what it's actually doing is worsening what is known as the spark gap. Now, the spark gap is the difference between the price of electricity and the price of gas. Now, I'm sure all of us who are heat pump owners, we've heard the people say, well, if electricity is 4 times the price of gas per kilowatt hour, then you need a combined coefficient of performance of at least 4, otherwise gas is cheaper. And that's not strictly true. But what we're starting to see now is the cost of, or the spark gap is increasing from about 4.2 to 4.7. And that means we are vastly approaching, or very fastly approaching, that gap of where there is no reason to go to electricity-based heating. That means these policy decisions are going to slow the implementation of things like heat pumps and potentially electric vehicles as well, as people start to say, why would I change? Why would I do what the government is asking me to do when there is no benefit for me whatsoever? And the unfortunate thing that Rachel said was that with electricity prices going the way that they're going, with all of these policy costs being added on, electricity is likely to continue to rise for at least the next 5 years. So, as part of the presentation, we then switched across to Phil as the main speaker. Phil talked a lot about smart tariffs. He put a really nice chart up on the screen, which I'll put on, that shows 13 different smart tariffs. And one of the things he talked about was that how each smart tariff was built for a specific technology. So there's a smart tariff for EV owners. There's a smart tariff for heat pump owners. There are smart tariffs for battery owners. There are smart tariffs for landlords. There are smart tariffs for insert name of segment of the customer base. There's a smart tariff for you. The problem is, as you can see from the diagram, there are lots of smart tariffs and people can feel overwhelmed by looking at which one do I choose? And if you've got multiple of these technologies, which one's best? And they've really, and again, this is not just a criticism of Octopus, this is a criticism of all energy companies, is they've made it too complicated. If you need specialist tools to be able to figure out what is the right tariff for you, sorry, Tim, from Tim and Kat's Green Walk, I know you've spent a lot of time building tools to do this, but they shouldn't be needed. We should not need tools to be able to choose the right tariff. We should be able to go, I have the following technologies, which is the right tariff for me, and it would say, you should be on insert name of tariff. The other criticism that came up from a lot of the people on the webinar was that, what if you have more than one piece of technology? What if you have solar and batteries and a heat pump and EVs? There isn't a smart tariff that kind of fits your use case. And this was something that Octopus were very open about, and said, they've kind of built these around what they call LCTs, low carbon technologies, where each tariff is specific, has a specific LCT. They are looking at, although there was no dates or anything, but they did say they are looking at smart tariffs for people with multiple LCTs. So hopefully at some point in the future, we might get some good news on that. And especially if you're a solar and battery owner, but you don't have an EV, then maybe there's something for you in the near future. The other thing that really sort of stuck out to me was that there were a number of questions around Octopus Intelligent Go and multiple EVs. Now, we've been a multi-EV family for about 7 years now, and Intelligent Go just didn't work. We have two Zappies. We can't enroll one of our Zappies because it sees the other one. There is a workaround, but you shouldn't have to work around to get it all to work. But there were a lot of people saying, we are now multi-EV family. And Intelligent Go says on the website that you can support multiple cars, but the tool, the technology, the web interface only supports one car. Now, Phil was very clear. He said, we do only support one car at this point. But as the number of multi-vehicle, multi-EV families starts to increase, it is something that they are looking at. And they did promise to get back to us about what multi-vehicle support might look like in the near future. There was a lot of questions around home battery integration, specifically from a bunch of Powerwall users. Apparently, Octopus have made it too easy to enroll your Powerwall into Octopus's smart tariffs. And some users who were just sort of looking and seeing, did this work for me, clicked a button, and next thing you know, they've handed over control of their Powerwall to Octopus without even realizing they'd done it. So they did say they would go and look at the user experience and see if they can just make it a little more difficult to enroll your Powerwall into the smart tariffs. There were questions around other battery manufacturers. Some SolarEdge users were asking about the limited support for their batteries. I saw a couple of people in the comments talking about the Libby from My Energy. So again, lots of questions which Octopus did say they would capture all of them and they would get back to people with answers to those questions. Then there was the question actually that I asked in the webinar, and a number of other people joined in. It was probably one of the most upvoted questions, was what about export tariffs? Now, for those that didn't see it, I put out a video a couple of days ago about what E.ON and EDF have done about reducing their export tariff down to 6 pence per kilowatt hour. And obviously everyone was up in arms and said, well, what if Octopus follows suit? So the question was asked very clearly by me and many others. What about export tariffs? Are you looking at cutting the rates in the near future? So I want to be very clear here. I want to give you exactly what Phil said. He said, there are no plans to change outgoing Octopus at this time. It's not being looked at. I don't know you could be any clearer than that. They're not looking at it, and there are no plans at this time. Now, that doesn't mean there are no plans in the future. They're not going to start looking at it tomorrow morning. But right now, as of the time of this webinar on the 24th of November, there are no plans to change this at this time, and it's not being looked at. Now, we've got the budget in 2 days. Who knows what will happen? That might throw a wrench into the whole machine. But right now, if you're on Octopus's export tariffs, specifically on outgoing fixed, then you can breathe a small sigh of relief. Lots of questions around vehicle to grid, specifically around compatible cars. Are they going to be expanding this? Obviously, earlier this year at the Technology Summit, they did announce their partnership with BYD, where you could get a BYD car, a wall box charger, and you could do vehicle to grid, vehicle to home through that. That's still being worked on. Some early trials are showing some strong potential, they're saying. But really, there's a lot of questions around, what about my brand of car? Nothing was announced today. They did say they're working with a number of different vendors, and they expect to be able to make announcements on this in the future. Then we got a number of questions around third-party tools, API integration, and actually, whilst the webinar was happening, there was an outage through the Octopus API. So if you use an app that talks to Octopus to get specific rates, then they might not be working right at this moment in time. This was something that it turns out an awful lot of people on this webinar, and I think that was sort of the audience for this webinar was technically savvy users. So I think it's unsurprising that a lot of people who use that API, whether it's through their own software or third-party software, did notice that there was an outage going on and asked if Octopus could do something about the outage. But one of the things that they committed to looking at was putting up a public status page so that it was somewhere you could simply go and check and say, hey, are you having any problems with any of your services? And if you ever use a lot of online cloud services, they generally have one of these status pages where you can go and check, hey, it's not me, it's not my app, it's not my software, it's Octopus that is having the problem. There were also a number of requests in the chat for Octopus to either officially support or lend support to the amazing and a brilliant username, Bottle Cap Dave. Bottle Cap Dave produces the Octopus integration for Home Assistant. Home Assistant is becoming an ever more important part of my life, and yeah, a big thanks to Bottle Cap Dave for the work he's done that allows you to take information from Octopus, process it in Home Assistant, and use that to control other devices. So for instance, I can have my solar edge batteries come on when there's cheap rate electricity from Octopus. Octopus talks to through Bottle Cap Dave's integration to Home Assistant, and then Home Assistant talks to my batteries, and that means that Octopus don't have to support my batteries. It's a really, really great thing. This all uses the API, so obviously when the API goes down, people get really upset about it. Then there were a number of different questions. I won't go into all of them here, but they were really good at answering people's questions. And again, questions that were sometimes quite specific, not general to the whole audience. So how does X work with Y? How do I make sure that my particular batteries don't discharge when I'm trying to charge my car outside the Octopus Intelligent Go hours? Phil did a really good job at answering as many of these as he possibly could during the webinar. So I'm sure Octopus will post the webinar at some point on their social media channels. But personally, I thought this was a really great webinar. As I say, my only complaint was I would say next time a little less presentation, a little more Q&A, given we ran out of time for questions at the end there. Really Good explanation from Rachel about the tariff complexities and what's happening with the spark gap, and how hopefully, government policy may change on this. And just as Greg said at the beginning of the presentation, it was really impressive to see the level of transparency. There were no questions that they have tried to avoid. They took the top upvoted questions, started at the top of the list, and just worked their way through them and got through as many as they possibly could, and then made a commitment to get back to other people to answer their questions. So full marks on transparency. And again, looking forward to the next one. The next webinar, I believe, is in a couple of weeks' time, where they're going to be talking about zero bills homes. So I will let you know what is said on that if you can't make that particular webinar. Anyway, with that, that's my reaction to the webinar. I hope you found this informative. If you only came for that one piece of information about export tariffs, hopefully that's put your mind at rest. And if I'm lucky, I will see you all back here real soon for another video. Take care. Bye-bye.